It should be. It's candy.
Yeah, I thought it would be a little more than like a sticker.
Yeah. All right. Looks like we're getting pretty full. Great. Should we just go ahead and start? Yeah. Well, I mean, you can use more fingers. Can everybody hear us okay? Does the mic work? All right. Do we need the mic? I'm going to use it. It's a good prop. I know. Really? Yeah, but you're granted your voice. As long as it's going that way. All right. Are we ready to get going this morning? Has everybody had their coffee and feeling good? Had a good breakfast? Ready to get going? All right. A few stragglers coming in. All right. Good morning. My name is AJ Heidel. I'm a project manager and architect with Barber McMurray Architects out of Knoxville. I had the privilege of being the project manager for this project. So welcome to Covenant Health Park, an urban multi-use stadium development as catalyst for economic and community growth. That's a mouthful, great title. But I think I can speak for everyone up here today that we are pretty thrilled to share this project with you. This has been a long time coming for us, a lot of hard years of work. And for us, this is a pretty unique project type. You know, what architect doesn't want to work on a baseball stadium? So that was something that when this came through our office, I was like, I am getting on that project. I'm volunteering. I don't care what else is in my project load. I think from the very beginning of this project, this was something that the City of Knoxville, the ownership, the design team recognized as being more than a stadium just for being the new home for the Knoxville Smokies. This was something that we realized was going to be, something that was going to revitalize and rejuvenate what is previously an underused and relatively run-down part of our city. And so, we all got together and through thoughtful planning and, design and integration of this stadium into the urban fabric of our city, I think this stadium has helped spur, new development around this area. It's promoted community engagement, and I think it's going to add lasting value, we hope, to this part of the town. So, like I said, it's been about 5 years of planning, design, construction for this project. We're going to try to condense that down into 45 minutes for you guys. And so at the end, we will have a Q&A that's probably about 10, 15 minutes. If you have questions, hold till then, but if it's just gnawing at you, I think you can speak up and we'll answer. So, all right, but before we get into all of that, I want to introduce everyone that's helping present this morning. With us, we have Michelle Porche. She told me how to say her last name today. She said Porche. She is with Knox and Knox County Planning. She's the Planning Service Manager. We also have RJ Justice, Chief of Urban Design and Development with the City of Knoxville. And then we have Elon Berry, who is a rock star architect for design and innovation architects. I also want to introduce our project team as a whole. I want to emphasize we are just a small part of this project team that took what that was necessary for making this project happen. Like I said, I am from Barber McMurray Architects. We teamed with Design Innovation Architects. Populous was our design consultant. They specialize in stadium design. Arcadis was our landscape architecture firm that we worked with. Walter P. Moore was the structural engineers, and then I.C. Thomason was mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. All right, just to try to give you a little bit of the lay of the land. The Covenant Health Park is located in the old city of Knoxville. It is home to the Knoxville Smokies, and they are the affiliate to the Chicago Cubs. In addition to that, it is home to One Knox Soccer Club. They have just wrapped up their first season. It was opening day was April 15th of this year, and I believe the last game was in early September. The overall project cost was $150 million. That includes like infrastructure improvements as well as the stadium proper. What you're seeing in this slide is the stadium plus private development buildings. So if you think of the right and left field lines as, I'll just point from here over and from that other building over as the stadium itself. Turning me up. The overall capacity is around 7,500 for the stadium itself, and then they are looking to host other events, which they can, so with seating on the field, it's about 11,500. The overall square footage is 196,500, and they are looking to host around 70 baseball games, 20 soccer matches, and 50 other events. I believe they just hosted the band Kansas a few weeks ago. And then I know this weekend we've got a beer festival. So I was hoping to get tickets and they are sold out. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Michelle. Or you've got one.
Hi guys. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history and provide some background and some context for the site. Clicker.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so the area around the stadium was formerly known as the Bottom. It was a close-knit group of American Africans living in a community consisting of homes and some businesses. One of the prominent businesses in the area was called Lay's Packing Market. It started off as a meat market and turned into a packing company. It also was home to High School, the Georgia Street Church, and some other smaller businesses. The area is prone to flooding, as you can see in the bottom image on the right. And so looking at the aerial image in 1935, all is well in the bottom. There's gridded street network. You can see it looks like mostly single-family homes, but you know there's businesses mixed in. This is prior to urban renewal. This area was thriving from the 1800s into the 1940s before urban renewal began in the 1950s. So if you look at the areas circled in red, you can see on this 1959 aerial image shows that the first creek was channelized, so it did stabilize the area and keep it from flooding anymore. However, you can also see it removed whole parts of neighborhoods. Several residents were displaced as their homes were removed. The gridded street network begins to collapse and disappear into something that's less connected. In 1959, you can see that process starting to play out again. And in 69, you can see the beginning of James White Parkway over here on the left-hand side, and then moving into 1985. By 1985, the bottom is completely gone. All those residents have been displaced. The area around the stadium is now industrial and warehouse uses, and the area to the south is completely disconnected from downtown and the area that was formerly known as the bottom. And this persisted until 2024. This aerial image was right when stadium construction was kind of in its beginning phases. You can see that street network that began and was prevalent in the 80s is still persisting to that day, with the exception of a new viaduct next to what looks like an interstate, which is actually James White Parkway. So there's two viaducts there now, which only further separated this area. And so in addition to the disconnection, you can see some images on the ground, like what that disconnection looks like on the ground, but also there's just general disinvestment in the area. Another site constraint you can see in the image on the lower left, there's an alleyway that's kind of running through what would be the stadium proper, so there's going to need to be some road realignments. Other site constraints revolved around utilities, so there's overhead lines that would need to be moved underground. The existing water, gas, and sewer lines would need to be upgraded, and on the south side of the creek, there's a 48-inch sewer line that needed to be relocated. However, and also the Lay's meatpacking plant was a brownfield site, so there were contaminated soils in the area to deal with as well. But despite all those constraints, the area is really well situated. You can see it's around a network of amenities. There's neighborhoods in beige and in parks that are kind of intermingled in there. And looking at development, so you can see the existing site here, and then layering on existing developments in the pink, you can see there's some apartment complexes. There's also the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame and the Civic Coliseum in the area. There's also a lot of parks. Some of these are within walking distance, so within a quarter mile there are 2 parks. Within a half mile there's an additional park. And there's also some proposed greenways in the area which would enhance pedestrian connectivity in the area and provide an additional amenity. And then it's also well positioned with a lot of cat routes. There's several stops within a quarter mile. And as part of the due diligence for this project, the team did a parking study and looked at the surrounding parking spaces in the area. So within a quarter mile, there are just over 1,300 spaces. Within a half mile, there's just under 7,700 spaces. And within a mile, it's close to 16,000 spaces. And so the team kind of factored that in when they were looking at how they were going to look at parking for the site. So now we're getting into the zoning. So the existing zoning is IMU, which is industrial mixed use. So the IMU zone does allow outdoor amusement facilities as a special use, which just means it needs planning commission approval. However, there are a lot of other uses that the team was considering, and they were not allowed in IMU. There are also some the dimensional standards that you can see up here. Some of those created some issues for the team, mostly the building height. So looking at the other zones in the area, would we want to rezone that? How would that look? So there's DKW you can see in the bottom left. That stands for downtown warehouse. So that does not allow an outdoor amusement facility as a use, though the dimensional standards did work better. The use itself was not allowed. CG2 stands for general commercial. That had the similar site constraints in terms of the dimensional standards as IMU. So neither one of those zones were really going to work. So then we looked at, okay, well, what zones do allow amusement facility or outdoor amusement facilities as a use, so that because the BZA does not have purview over uses, they can only give you a variance from dimensional standards. So a variance really wasn't a route that the team could take. So we looked at the 2 zones that did allow it, which is highway commercial and regional commercial, is what that should say. Those are both 2 uses that allow that, but they are the intent of those districts, the description of those districts, and the dimensional standards of those districts really weren't in line with what was going on in that area. That's more for like a Walmart or big box type of store, a sea of parking, really not appropriate for an urban area like this. And so that's when we started considering the plan development. So what is a plan development? So here's the intent statement. It's kind of a lot of words. Really what it is, it's something that's intended to encourage and allow more creative and flexible development of land. The important part of that statement is it's more flexible development than is possible under district zoning regulations. And then that's also, in response to that, providing amenities and benefits. So it's not conditional zoning. It's not intended to just say, you can't use this use, here's a plan development, provide us some amenities and you can get it. It's more to be something that's grander and more special and unique that's really not accommodated by the zoning, and how a plan development could make that work and not be something prohibitive to keep something like that coming into a community. And so a little bit more about a plan development. It's not a zone. It's also not an overlay zone, though it kind of functions like one. So in Knoxville, how it works is you're asking for exceptions to things that don't work, and that could be a use, it could be a dimensional standard or a design standard. And so if you've asked for an exception, that is what holds sway. If you've not asked for an exception, then the base zoning standard is what's in line. So it's basically 2 standards kind of together, similar to, well, I guess just having your own set of standards for your project. So on the map, it looks like it's an overlay zone. It's shown with a hatch, which is how we show overlays in Knoxville, but it's kind of a mixture of both. So now I'm going to turn it over to RJ. Oh, actually, I forgot to talk about the PD process. So the PD process in itself is super complex, and I'm not going to go into that. That would be a whole 45-minute presentation on its own. So I'm going to boil it down into just the biggest pieces of that. So if you've got a plan development, you could basically come through with your preliminary plan, and that's going to get you go through the planning commission for your first approval, then you go through city council, and then you come back and you start refining that further, getting all your ducks in a row, and then you come back with your final plan. If it's some substantial compliance, you get your planning commission and then your city council, and basically your planning commission is approving the plan, city council is approving just the legislative change onto the map. As you guys know, just because you have a final plan doesn't mean everything is finally buttoned up. You might have some further modifications that you need to make. And so in Knoxville, there's a list of modifications that are considered major. So one of those is your parking changes by 10%. So if you have, changes to your number of parking spaces, if that's 10% or over, it's a major modification. That means it needs to go through planning commission and city council again. If it's less than 10%, you just have to go through planning commission. But it sets this path for how you do those modifications. And so all that to say, it's really important on the front end to understand what it is about the zoning that you can't meet, so that you can ask for an exception for it and then keep the modifications to a point where you don't have to keep coming through that process. Because as you can imagine, that would be really complex, very time consuming, and really just kind of throw a kink in the whole works. And so I think the team came up with a really creative way to kind of address that, and I'll let them get into that as we get into the design. And I'm gonna turn it over to RJ.
Thank you. So many things to hold here. Thanks, Michelle. And so after the team evaluated what is the right land use path, often, that is part of the challenge, is discovering what the creativity and flexibility and how you're going to enter into the land use policy. So once the team established that they were going to approach plan development, it was time to get creative. So the team, the ownership, and the stakeholder group held a design shred. So over the course of 3 days, a group of interdisciplinary folks came together to dream and scheme how can this site plan that fits within the plan development exceptions that they had laid out really start to be the true community catalyst that this project was meant to be. So going back to all of the blighted properties and just disconnected neighborhoods and communities that you saw through the urban renewal process, and just changes in land use, how we could come together and create these spaces through sketching and thinking together over, many hours, trash paper, markers, pencils, thinking together in a space over the course of 3 days. I think everyone always appreciates too, in those interdisciplinary teams being brought to the table very early on. I think everybody in here can say you appreciate that it's not just an owner having ideas, it's not just an architect having ideas. And it's not just the city saying this is what you have to do. So everyone came together and really thought big about how to create something that would be truly lasting in the community. That charrette helped also establish the program elements and the functional components. So like Michelle pointed out, some of these uses and forms and masses aren't allowed in the traditional zoning. So how the plan development allowed for more creative uses to be that true vibrant hub that really brought back together the East Knoxville community and downtown in a really well thought out design. So this area also needed major infrastructure upgrades. So not only were the underground utilities over 100 years old, but the sidewalks and streetscapes were really not accommodating for what the anticipated uses were. So all of these studies just started to think, how does multimodal transportation work? How do we get people not only on foot but on bicycles? How do we get people in transit and in their individual cars and ride shares to the space? But also, how do we recreate this massing and set the stage for an extension of downtown, but also a reflection of those urban neighborhoods? So the sketches and the drawings turned into more established computer-generated studies where we started to really look at the dimensional standards and how those spaces would come to life and allow for people to use the space every day and feel comfortable on a Tuesday morning, but also how these streetscapes accommodated the 7,500 visitors to the stadium or the 11,000 folks coming to the beer festival with AJ. Again, we thought through new transit patterns, new greenway patterns, and also just how we incorporate dining spaces into the area, and also reflecting back on parking. How do we navigate directing people where we want them to go on foot and in their vehicles? So also, instead of mimicking what used to be there, how did we reflect on the historic warehouse district, but also create a modern design for the stadium that reflected that fabric, but also really was an icon in itself? So I think the studies, I mean, you know, these pictures are really detailed, but the team thought through how even the storefronts were recreated, how people were attracted to the space, how the wayfinding and the signage and the branding would all create this space that was a neighborhood hub, but also really served for major events. So at the conclusion of the 3-day studies, some really amazing renderings were created to kind of put all the pieces together. So how does density, mixed use, architectural detail, streetscapes, and infrastructure come together to create a seamless transition from downtown and from the neighborhoods and be a new community catalyst for not only people, again, not just event days, but how do we get people into this space every day? So you can see here, do I have a little, look at that. There were a lot of there was a lot of attention placed on some of these spaces in and around the nooks and crannies of the buildings to be public plazas. We have a really successful plaza in Knoxville called Market Square, if any of you all have ever been there. So we wanted to create something that was similar but could also take some of the pressure off of Market Square but have its own unique identity. So those public spaces were really essential to the design of the project. So these were some of the early visions and schematic drawings that were used in the next stages to communicate with other stakeholders and to the community to really emphasize what is the public benefit of the project.
Actually, can I use that mic? I don't think this one works.
You got all your things?
I think I got it. How did you do the laser?
Well, it's a really tricky button. There you go.
All right. All the props. I love this thing. So this slide is pretty much showing the type of building, the warehouse district down on Jackson Avenue where the stadium is located. This is really just us studying basically the datum lines, the materiality, the proportions of the openings, all those type of things, even the signage that was going to influence the stadium. We didn't want this to look like some brand new polished stadium that doesn't fit within its context. So these buildings are just down the street. If you stand on Jackson Avenue, you can actually see almost all of these and the stadium at the same time. There we go. This slide makes me laugh. And I'll tell you why. About a week of my life was spent walking down this street carrying straps of bricks and comparing them to these buildings. And we were looking at utility brick at the time, so it was even bigger than a modular size brick. So I'm carrying they're about 50 pounds of strap. And I can't tell you how long it took to arrive at these colors and how many times I would go back to the office. I'd be holding up a strap of brick and I'd be like, for the love of God, take the photo. And then we'd get back and I would show my boss and he'd say, that's not it. And we would order it again and they would ship us more brick. And then I'd go down there and I'd be like, for the love of God, take the photo. And so by the time we arrived at these, it was just like I had the most massive shoulders from all these shoulder workouts from holding up brick. And then people would forget what we ordered. And I was like, I've got this. If you need to know, send them to me. But basically, these are the colors of the masonry that these are all on the stadium and the surrounding developments. And I think they fit very well within that context. Do you want that?
Does this one work? Okay, it does. So also throughout the design charrette process, we looked towards precedent studies of other successful urban ballpark development projects. The Smokies being a Cubs affiliate, I would say Wrigleyville and the Cubs Stadium was a huge influence for us, and the newly completed Gallagher Way Plaza adjacent to that stadium. We also looked at the Atlanta Braves Battery Park as a new redevelopment project, and this project was specifically useful in helping us identify types of signage that we might need to request exceptions for in the planned development.
Also, we loved the Nashville Sound scoreboard. The Tennessee Smokies, or the Knoxville Smokies, has the shape of Tennessee as our scoreboard. And that was something that throughout the project, it came up, if once you're looking at budget, they started to say, do you really need a Tennessee-shaped scoreboard? And that was something that everyone was like, yes, we do. Have you seen Nashville Sound? So that's kind of the idea generation for that. Also, what Elon was saying about Gallagher Way, this is outside of Wrigley Field. This is, when we met with the Smokies, we also met with the manager of the Cubs. He came down, and this was something that he mentioned because he's used to having this mixed-use development right outside his stadium. So that was like meeting the president. I think we had about 5 minutes with him, and they ushered him off. But it was fun to do. Right.
Okay, so at the end of the charrette process, our site plan resulted in what you see here, which includes about 7 smaller scale mixed-use buildings surrounding the ballpark and stadium proper. After conversations with developers and economic impact studies, they came to the conclusion that potentially larger mixed-use buildings that included parking garages for residents would have a more successful financial outcome. And so after the charrette, we pivoted a little bit and looked at expanding building footprints. You might go to the next slide. We looked at the impacts of expanding the adjacent private development building footprints on the site plan. And however, all the original programmatic elements remained in the project. It's important to understand that the surrounding mixed-use private development was always a part of the discussion, and it was always a part of the initial phase of the project. It was understood that the success of the project outside of game days depended on residential and retail component being there from day one and not later down the road. If you want to go to the next slide.
Here, I want to say something real quick. So when we look at this, one thing that we wanted to do was ensure that the project had a certain density. Currently, the stadium A, B, and C are all developed, and D is a lot that currently serves the stadium. E, F, and G, F has kind of become part of the plaza that's actually now there, and E and G remain for future development. But that was something that was important to us because if you think about a traditional stadium, being in a sea of parking, that is not what we wanted here, even though it seems like that was a lot of feedback we got is where are we going to park. When we did these, A, B, and C all have parking for all of the housing as part of those on site and still have usable space around them. The parking's under the buildings. Sorry, this thing's lagging. There you go.
So the site plan you see here on the screen is kind of where we landed and is close to what was actually constructed and is there today. And that includes Yardley Flats on the east side, which is an apartment building, the Delaney building on the west side, which is a 9-story condo building. Both of these have mixed-use retail components, and there's also mixed-use retail within the stadium itself. The Greenway connection was also maintained to the concourse and the large event plaza on the west side.
I think some of these other features are probably worth mentioning because I think they're very unique. This is the first creek. It goes underground next to the Delaney building. So if someone really cranks a home run, you can actually hit it in there, but they've got nets to catch the ball so it doesn't go in the water. And then this also has places for retail or restaurants that are currently being developed right now as well. Is there anything else? We've got a children's play area in this area as well. So there is a very dynamic area. This is my favorite place of the stadium. This is the Modelo Bar, and it is built as a bridge over the creek facing the stadium. It's one of the best seats in the house.
Okay, so as design work was going on, we worked with the city to plan public engagement events, and one of these events took the form of a public block party, which was actually at the site the summer before, or as kind of the financial agreement and the plan development were going through public approval processes, and we found this format to be really productive and useful. It provided the opportunity for the public to engage with the project team directly in a casual setting. And I'd say our number one concern we heard from the public was about parking, but this format allowed us to kind of have casual conversations about and explain that this is the urban nature of the project and share the findings from the parking study and what was available within a mile radius.
Yeah, for this event, like she said, we really received a lot of feedback before this where we expected people to say, where are we going to park? How are we going to get there? And I was actually kind of scared of attending this event because I was one of the presenters, and I was like, I'm going to get hammered on this. But this was an overwhelmingly positive response. This guy right here is Mickey. He was a project manager. He moved on to another firm, and they brought me in, and I was always supposed to be the project manager for the Delaney building, and they brought me in and said, you get to do both.
So, how did construction go? What do the mixed-use retail or mixed-use buildings, public plazas, and ballpark look like today? On the screen here, you'll see an aerial view of the Yardley Flats apartment building. This was not one of our projects, but it was developed by J. Fielden, and their architect was Pool & Pool Architects out of Nashville and Charlotte. The project cost was estimated at about $70 million. It includes about 2,300 square feet of retail at the north end off the East Plaza. There are about 233 apartments, and about half of those face the field itself, which is pretty exciting. And that's Yardley Flats.
So one of my favorite things about Yardley Flats is if you look in this area right here, that's their pool deck. So again, if someone really gets a hold of one, you might need to wear a helmet while you're swimming because watch out. Also, these apartments are built as a bridge. This is one of the four, we call them plazas, entry plazas, but this one is just for egress. And so being only for egress, we didn't have to use the full width of this area. And so that's a children's play area. We put it under there so hopefully a fly ball doesn't catch a kid. All right, so this is the Delaney building I was talking about. This is a photo of it in construction. This is a primarily condo building. It has 47 condos. The project cost was $80 million. One unique aspect of this is it was a major league requirement that Boyd Sports, who managed the Smokies, operates either on-site or just off-site from the actual field. So their offices it's basically this half of the northern second floor. And so we got to do that space as well as a separate project. The full first floor is, I believe it's broken up into about 9 tenants right now. These are still being developed. But all of these spaces are going to be either restaurants, bars, it could be, I guess, retail. But they are, I believe there's 3 of those 9 that are already accounted for right now. This is showing it before the awnings go on. So the awnings are there now. And along here, there were easements so that you could have outdoor seating onto the plaza. Like I said, all the parking is accounted for on site. So this is this whole deck, I guess what I'm outlining right there. And then all the way under the building is parking, and that's access from here. Other easements that we had to do to make this building viable was in order to have the openings and views that we wanted right on the concourse of the stadium, because this building's face on the stadium side is the property line. We had to submit or create an easement that basically said the ballpark will never build right against the building on that concourse because there's distances that have to be maintained for fire code. Trying to think of other interesting facts. This looks rough right now, but that is the subroof below a pedestal paver system that's there right now and green trays, roof paver trays. So this is an amenity deck. It has even like a place where you can take your dogs out if you need to, so you don't even have to go down to the ground. So that is the Delaney. It is still under construction. We are wrapping up with, we've got COs from the 4th floor down. We're going for occupancy every floor between now and pretty much Christmas, and then it will be complete. These are views from the Delaney building. This is the amenity space on the 4th floor. Everybody wanted the 9th floor. Everybody said, I want the highest floor you can. It's got the best views. I was like, they haven't seen the 3rd floor yet. This is the 3rd floor. You have some massive balconies. That is 1 floor above the concourse, and to me, they have the best views of the stadium.
And actually, the majority of the condos in this building do face the stadium. There's a couple on the 3rd floor, right? The 4th floor.
Yeah,
that
these
face
right
the
here are
plaza.
the only ones that don't face the stadium.
So views to the ballpark itself were very important to the planning of that project.
Yeah, we actually started saying this was a double-loaded corridor and had condos on each side, and ownership said that's not going to fly, and we redesigned.
This is the main public event plaza that is owned by the City of Knoxville right outside the Delaney building. It's about 60,000 square feet, and it includes an artificial turf lawn, a splash pad / water feature. There's some terracing going on, but the intent of that was to provide a small stage area to host other types of events. And there's trees and planting areas to help break up some of the hardscapes as well.
We actually sized this. Market Square does a ice rink in the winter, and so we sized this to be able to accommodate that, but I don't know that that is something that will actually take place there or not.
This is the northeast entry plaza, also known as Giants Plaza, and it features 6 statues honoring the Knoxville Giants in East Knoxville history. Boyd Sports partnered with the Beck Cultural History Center, and they played a crucial role in providing historical context for these statues.
So this is my favorite statue. This is One Wing Maddox. He is not missing an arm from the statue. He was missing an arm in real life, and he was a pitcher for the Knoxville Giants.
AJ touched on easements earlier, but this diagram kind of shows the complexity of the relationships between each project, and it's kind of an interesting process to go through. You'll see the colors kind of highlight balconies and awnings that overlap property lines, and so easements needed to be recorded to allow those encroachments. It was also a very long exercise with the attorneys to determine what the better path was for platting, where the property line was actually located. So I think we went back and forth several times on if the parking garage that is under the Delaney building would be within the Delaney building property line, or if the plaza on top of it would be an access easement. And yeah.
This really shows that First Creek going underground. That was a unique challenge because I remember there was a day that my boss said, "Are you sure a caisson is not going to hit the creek?" And I was like, "I hope to God." But anyway, here you go.
Utility relocation. So Michelle touched on the existing utilities earlier in the presentation. This was a huge effort that started before the stadium even broke ground. And there were overhead transmission lines that had to be put underground into electrical and data duct banks. Gas lines needed to be expanded. It was a strategy to try to keep all of the water and sewer infrastructure within the asphalt part of the street. But that process was completed in 3 phases.
Yeah, and I want you to notice, so this is Willow Avenue, and it originally ran right here. So every utility that went through there was severed. And I believe there's a 48-inch sewer main that was over 28 feet deep or something
Right,
like that.
yeah. So, yeah, the 48-inch sewer relocation should have been its own phase, I guess. But construction was very challenging. It was the largest piece of infrastructure, and we hit rock during construction. So chipping that away, I think, expanded the timeline for completion. But it was extremely challenging to move that sewer line a little bit south.
It's hard to follow a fantastic architect duo and the topic of utility relocation with a spreadsheet with numbers, but I'm sure some of you are wondering, how did we pay for this? And so enter the economic impact summary in establishing our public financing strategy. We knew it was essential not only for the pro forma, but for engagement with the community to understand the potential and the economic impact to the whole area. So our study revealed that over $480 million would be generated over the next 30 years, that we would create over 400 full-time jobs, and that sales tax generated within the stadium and the surrounding developments would cover a significant portion of the stadium's debt service. Who's got the clicky? Yeah. So we started to put those numbers into all the other investment numbers and think, what is the strategy to help bring this to life? How do we also establish the agreements that will put into place and outline financing, construction, and operations of this publicly owned stadium, but also address the private mixed-use development? So the key components of the development agreement and the financing agreement were that the city and the county would both contribute a significant portion of the stadium's total cost through a bond issue, so around $65 million. I'm going to quiz you all on these numbers after. We also received a grant from the state of Tennessee for $13.5 million. The private development contributed over $100 million, around $150 million. Also, the surrounding private development and the sales tax generated inside the stadium would establish a form of tax increment financing that would contribute to paying for the public infrastructure. So all of those giant utility relocations and all of the streetscapes and the plazas, that tax increment financing would be a significant boost to helping those be and stay in the project. Also, there was a team lease, so a little higher than most team leases, but the team committed to contributing $1 million over 30 years to the project. So this area had already been established a redevelopment area by the city. So all of these lines really show the bigger picture, but some of the dashed lines inside show how the economic impact study and the evaluation of the pro forma led us to realize we needed to expand the TIF district boundary in order to generate those numbers that would help bring to life all of the public infrastructure.
So as the stadium agreement was being worked through, we were behind the scenes working on the plan development application to resolve the zoning and land use issues that Michelle touched on earlier. A few of the most important, I guess, critical exceptions requested were from the dimensional and design standards and allowed uses. So we looked at allowing the Delaney building needed a taller building height. We looked at modifying the pattern for repeating materials slightly, and added, at the time we didn't know what kind of retail would be attracted to the development, so we needed to add exceptions to allow other types of uses that included financial institutions, medical, dental office, preschool, kindergarten, etc. There were also exceptions requested for exterior lighting. So Knoxville, the zoning ordinance has a full cutoff requirement, and we looked at allowing a different kind of lighting standard, which is the bug system, which is the uplight. I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but anyways, it allows a certain amount of uplighting that is compliant with Dark Sky Association. So that we saw that as an equal alternative to the cutoff requirement, and it allowed some of these architectural accent lighting uplights that you'll see on the project. We also needed to allow a little bit taller light poles for the light poles to go on top of the stadium roof itself. And there were also additional exceptions requested for accessory uses, to allow taller flagpoles and sidewalk signs, etc.
Sorry.
No, you're good. As Michelle touched on earlier, a big part of the plan development is what are the community benefits the project is bringing to the surrounding neighborhood. And on that application, we're able to list how the project would connect the old city to East Knoxville, how it was revitalizing the area, how it was providing needed housing and employment opportunities, the brownfield site mitigation, and architectural compatibility within a district.
All right, I'm going to go very fast because I know we're trying to wrap up so that we've got some time for questions, but we're just going to wrap up with a few interesting facts about the stadium. The stadium was, we considered using mass timber. So the roof of the stadium is what's called CLT, it's cross-laminated timber. It's a 3-ply, 5.5-inch thick, 40-foot long by 8-foot wide roof planks. And through the use of that, I'm not going to read all this, but I do encourage you to. But basically, ended up saving, tons of steel. It helped us achieve that long cantilever. And really the gist of it is, other than looking great, it's more sustainable. It sped up construction, and so the equivalent of this basically versus a traditional steel corrugated metal deck that you'd use on something like this, we saved the equivalent of removing 92 cars from the road or 46 homes operating for 1 year just by using something that I think looks better. Also, how many of you knew it takes $10,000 to build a pitcher's mound between every game? I think I'm in the wrong business. This stadium was intended to be the home for the Knox 1 as well, which overlaps the Smokies baseball season. So given the fact that they're going to be playing soccer some days and then they're going to be playing baseball others, the soccer field ran in this direction, by the way. they said we could either spend $10,000 in a day rebuilding the pitcher's mound every single time, or we can do a retractable pitcher's mound. And so it uses electric screw jack motors, and it just sinks down into the field, and they sod right over the top of it.
Looking at providing a variety of seating types was really important for attracting corporate clients and families. So Covenant Health Park has 13 suites and a club and party decks on the view level. There's a mix of standard stadium seating and premium seating within the seating bowl itself, and also multiple picnic terraces and the outfield bar, Modelo watering hole, which is everyone's favorite. And so nearly 5 months after the first pitch at Covenant Health Park, Boyd Sports has employed nearly 450 part-time and full-time employees. Concession sales are up 39% since last season, and merchandise sales are up 31%. Over 1,000 groups have been hosted at the stadium. There's been about 185 events booked and counting. CAT transit is up. I think they counted around 68,000 riders. And all the retail space, or a lot of the retail spaces are leased and set to open by next season. And one of the biggest things for the project is that this ballpark beat out a AAA ballpark for baseballparks.com Ballpark of the Year 2025, which is an award that recognizes the best new build or substantially rebuilt ballparks for that year. And, in conclusion, a lot of planning, coordination, and effort went into the development of this project, and we are extremely proud to have helped deliver such a great public amenity for the City of Knoxville, and are really excited to see how it impacts future development and growth towards East Knoxville for years to come.
Questions? Someone's got to have a question. Yes, sir.
I'll start this off, especially for you guys here.
Okay.
Architects, you make this sound really great, but the reality is, okay, you build an athletic venue for 20,000 fans, but you have parking for 5,000 fans. So where else are they going to park? 2 blocks away, they're parking in people's yards and marring up, especially when it's wet. Shouldn't we have in the cost of these venues a place for parking somewhere or not building? I know Nashville, you can't tell me that it doesn't happen here in Nashville. You've got a big problem with parking. So shouldn't that be in part of the cost of that venue, or are we ignoring that? And I'm not charging you all with that. But I'm looking statewide. We have more and more people that are wanting to move to a smaller community and build these venues. And another part of this, it's nice to have these open spaces, green spaces. Who's going to keep them up? Does the neighborhood keep them up? Does the government keep them up? Or do we just let them dilapidate over the years? So just, if you want to respond to this.
I can say a few things, but you do as well. All right, so the stadium, so on a packed out day, is 7,500 people in the stadium itself. One thing that the city did was the Civic Coliseum right here has unused parking. I don't remember how many parking spots are in those parking garage. But basically, this Civic Coliseum doesn't host near as many events as what the stadium does. So what they did was the Knoxville Area Transit has utilized those parking lots. They're just existing parking garages that can handle thousands and thousands of cars. And what they've done is reroute so that they have a shuttle drop-off that takes roughly, I think it's 2 minutes. My daughter rides it every day to the stadium. And then they've also utilized, we've got lots and lots and lots of underutilized downtown parking garages. There's a whole presentation that my buddy of mine did for Knox Heritage that shows how much of downtown Knoxville has been converted to either parking, surface parking, or parking garages. And so those also have become parking lots for the stadium on game days that have designated routes to the stadium.
So, yeah, I mean, great questions. Those are all the non-fun things to talk about besides all the brick carrying and pretty trees and fountains and connectivity. How do we manage those spaces? And above and beyond evaluating how we can creatively use underutilized parking in the area, changing people's patterns, also creating a shuttle with our public transit that went to these garages so you could buy a ticket and then add on a $5 ride pass. So we came up with creative solutions like that with our partners. Also, new developments that come online in this area, we incentivize the inclusion of structured parking. So we're asking to partner with private developers to build out some of those needed parking as the area continues to grow. But as far as managing public spaces, I mean, I work for the City of Knoxville, and I will say we do a pretty poor job managing public spaces. I think a lot of cities can say we kind of get by on the bare minimum with not only staff, but financial resources or skills and expertise. So this project in particular, and a lot of our new developments downtown where we have new public spaces, we're working with private developers and owners to manage those spaces better in coordination with the city so they not only look better, are better lasting, but also function better for their own day-to-day needs.
Yeah, and RJ, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Boyd Sports manages, I know they at least, so Boyd Sports, who manages the Smokies, manages these plazas. So they're responsible for their upkeep.
Yeah, so in that plaza in particular, we had a higher level of detail and mechanics to operate that to serve the high demand and all the activities. So we have irrigation in this park, and we usually don't include irrigation, for an example. So, but Boyd Sports was willing to not only contribute to the cost, but also the management of keeping those things online and active and functioning to support the basis to provide the experience for the users.
Hopefully that answered pretty well. Is there anyone else? Yes.
You mentioned that there's some brownfield remediation as part of the site. Could you speak to a little bit about like what that all entailed?
So I can a bit, hopefully others can weigh up. But so part of that was soil haul off, but a lot of the orientation of the field was so that, I'm trying to think if there's one with contours in here, but basically this is one story above this. And so a lot of the brownfield was kind of in this location. That's where the meat packing plant was. And so this did have to get hauled off and treated. But a lot of what was left, they were testing soil as they went. And once they reached a point where it was not contaminated, they used that soil to then move to the other side of the site. We were trying to have as little haul off, and we were trying to have, a zero fill site basically. So really all that was hauled off was the contaminated soil. Everything else basically for the Delaney building, when they dug out this garage, was moved to this side of the site, being uphill, and that was used to basically from here over, here is slab on grade, and then below all of this is, the locker rooms, all of the open areas. So this was where they moved most of that soil, actually.
And I guess a part of working on a brownfield site is the extra permitting and processes and procedures required to have everything in check. So having that brownfield mitigation report was an important component of working on this site.
An interesting fact too, this is a very engineered drainage field, the field itself. It is something that can hold up a fire truck. It can handle, I can't remember the amount of rain. It can have a tremendous amount of rain. But basically, water filters down the stadium, and once it filters through the field, it cleans the water. It almost acts as, there are water quality units on this site, but it filters the water before they hit the water quality unit and before they get into the streams and creeks. I thought that was something very neat.
When was it completed and what was the final cost?
It was completed, well, they opened April of this past year. This is their first season, so really completion was late March. It was close. The final cost, this project was broken out into multiple projects, so we tracked the infrastructure separate from the stadium. The stadium itself, I think, was 117 million. And then the utilities and plazas and all that included is pushing 150. And that does not include the private developments. The private developments were all separate from that.
Is the private development all finished?
The Delaney is still being built. It's tracking for mid to late December for final. Yardley is complete. Anyone else? These are great questions. I'm having fun. Well, thank you guys. It's been
Yeah,
a
thank
pleasure,
you.
yeah.
I was just going to add, please come visit us in Knoxville. I know everyone in Chattanooga, Nashville, and Knoxville, we're all building stadium-based mixed-use districts right now, so it's so fun to learn from each other. So visit us for a soccer game or a baseball game or a beer festival concert sometime soon.
And I'll just add that we've had, and in the planning department, we've had inquiries looking at like 4 or 5 different properties surrounding the stadium, so it's already becoming a catalyst for future development.
Thank you.